From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
A target so nice, they hacked it twice. Vermont governor rejects data privacy bill. It dies. UK and US see medical records leaked. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we're ready for some insight, some opinion, and definitely some expertise from our guest, Bil Harmer, operating partner and CISO at Craft Ventures. Bill, thank you so much for making the time. I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate you being here, breaking down the news with us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to come.
All right, we will jump into the headlines in just one moment. Before we do so, have to thank our sponsor for today, Vanta, compliance that doesn't suck too much. Remember, you can join us on YouTube Live. Do so. Go to CISOseries.com, hit the events dropdown, and look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. You can click on it and join us. Once you've joined us, you can contribute your comments in our chat. We love seeing everybody participating in there, getting involved, sharing your questions, your thoughts, your opinions on the story. You can challenge what we're saying. We're fine with it. We're comfortable in our cybersecurity knowledge, expertise, and insight there. Sure, why not? Just let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So we'll keep an eye on that. But we've got about 20 minutes. So let's jump right into the news. This one definitely caught my eye this week. A target so nice, they hacked it twice. CDK Global offers a SaaS platform used by roughly 15,000 car dealerships. One of those things that you've definitely used when you went to a car dealership. You just never knew what it was called. Earlier this week, it announced it suffered a data breach, which saw it shut down large parts of its infrastructure and disrupt dealership sales and service operations. As it began restoring services late in the day on June 19th, it suffered another data breach that evening, resulting in another shutdown. Although the company had hoped to restore services by today, June 21st, when we're recording this, an update supplied yesterday says they are no longer able to provide an estimate as to when systems will be restored, and the outage will likely continue for several more days. So, Bill, clearly the stuff of nightmares for any CISO, like just an absolute worst case scenario here, especially given it's still unknown, at least to the public here, if there were two separate attacks were involved. We don't really know the details of the attacks or what data has been impacted. As you watch this unfold, what are your thoughts?
Oh, it's this one I feel for these guys. There's so many things that could have happened here, right? Like they could have missed something in their recovery. They could have been following their plan, doing the recovery, missed something, and the same actor or another threat actor got in using the same vulnerability, but in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
They could have had two vulnerabilities, right? It's very possible, or they could have had a Trojan left behind, which is kind of what I think. That's my guess. Is threat actors get in, they utilize one vulnerability, but they plant another one so that they can get back in. The fact that they attacked them while they were coming back up, kind of harsh. I would have thought they'd wait a little bit, pop again next week. But this really, really just highlights the need, in my opinion, for things like red teams and tabletop exercises. And this is like, I've been talking to a few CISOs about this whole table talk. They actually just ran Defend the North up in Canada, a 3-day hackathon up there on the same principle. And some of the things that you got to take into consideration is not just having a viable recovery plan, but actually not using it, like testing it, but testing it outside of Tuesday afternoon at 3:00, right? Test it 4 a.m. on Saturday morning when everybody's asleep. Call them out of the blue, run the unscheduled ones. And I'm always advising, bring in media, bring in actors, hire somebody as an actor to play a reporter, to point a camera in somebody's face and start to create the stress that you need to figure out if you're going to, operate properly and find all of the things that you need to find.
Or even an angry car dealership, a network or something like that that's calling you up and being like, hey, literally my business cannot operate like that. That's what I think. I saw some speculation out there in the press that, were they trying to recover too fast? Is that why the second attack occurred? And without any knowledge, like, it seems entirely premature to throw stones at a company when they're already down. Like, let's figure out the postmortem and that then we can talk about it. We can take some lessons learned from there. But like, just the idea of, this is a business imperative, not just for them. I mean, obviously, yes, they need to get their business on track, but knowing that you have 15,000 other businesses that have a direct lifeline to you and trying to respond to that, to me, is that's some
Yeah,
crazy
like
pressure to deal with.
if you're even getting 10% of the customers calling, it's 1,500 customers calling. But truly, what we're also seeing is we are seeing one of the great flaws in the SaaS model, right? Because it is a single point where you can attack multiples, right? You can create 15,000 customer pressure by attacking CDK Global, and you get one target, but all that pressure. So if this is a ransomware attack, that pressure is going to be on to pay or recover, right? And maybe that was what it was. They were recovering too fast, and they came back in and did it again. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a real interesting, and I do feel for them. I think let them get recovered, let them get back up. Let's see what the postmortem says.
Yeah, and when we get more details on that, we'll definitely be covering those on cybersecurity headlines. So stay tuned as we learn more. Next up here, in more political news, I guess, Vermont governor rejects data privacy bill. It dies. Last week, Vermont Governor Phil Scott vetoed consumer privacy legislation that would give individuals the right to sue companies that violate their data privacy rights. Governor Scott called the measure one that would make Vermont more hostile than any other state to many businesses and nonprofits. The bill, named H121, faced a vote in Vermont's General Assembly this past Monday. A tripartisan coalition in the House overwhelmingly voted to override Scott's veto. However, a last-minute lobbying push from the business community resulted in Scott's veto being supported. So, Bill, classic case of essentially the left and the right sparring over protection of data and individual rights on the one hand, and the interests of business owners on the other. It also sets a precedent that other states could follow, making that effort for data privacy even more difficult. We saw this nationally, even with a push for a data privacy bill kind of being scuttled with this kind of private right to action provision being what seems to be the poison pill. I'm curious, what's your take on this?
Yeah, okay. Try to keep politics out of this, but it's never going to happen. I'm torn on this because, as much as I want to see proper privacy, and a former privacy officer, see proper privacy laws implemented, I watched the same type of thing happen in Europe when back in the late 2000s, when we were all trying to achieve the EU privacy directive, right? So we had 28 member states with more than 28 interpretations of it, because Germany had at least 3 different interpretations depending on which region you were in. And it was killing business. It literally, I was watching SAP relocate headquarters to Philadelphia. Like it was just so arduous and so difficult because you would head for take Germany as the standard for data privacy. You'd use that as your bar, and you'd hit that, and you'd say, great, I hit that. And then you go to Italy and they go, yeah, but we just do it differently. It's not better, it's not worse, we just do it differently. And then France, differently. And you just kept having to create more and more red tape or unnecessary process to achieve the same goal, which is what drove GDPR to be pushed hard, because they needed a single set of laws interpreted in a single court. And I think that's what the US needs. We need a federal law, federal privacy law that is mandated across, because, okay, Vermont does something and California does something different. And then, Louisiana comes up and says, well, I'm going to make it even better. Well, what's better? Is it better? Is it harder? Is it more, and you just find businesses start having serious trouble achieving it. And then you add to the fact that this is literally the land of litigation, right? You can use litigation to punish. So it becomes, I think, a little bit more problematic there as well.
Yeah, and it really, where I'm at is kind of what Maryland's been pushing with their data privacy law, is really stressing data minimization, right? Is setting like okay, maybe the private right to action is not feasible for a national bill or Vermont's bill or something like that, but the idea being that we need to have something with real teeth to encourage organizations, to give them a very concrete business reason why they should collect the absolute minimum, because to me, that's the realization that a data breach is going to happen. You're going
Right.
at some point, an organization is going to lose data. Like, you need to have the least amount of that available, that you still need to operate your business, but
Right.
that isn't geolocation on everyone, because your solitaire app could toggle that switch on, right? Something like
exactly. And like, you look at TikTok, right? TikTok, literally read the terms of service. That is a frightening thing to read, and I put all sorts of crap on my phone. TikTok is the one app I will not put on my phone. Just I saw I had somebody else showed me what it did, and it terrified me, the amount of collection that was in there. So yeah, I think if we can find a way to create that minimized need for business, not need for business because I'm going to market 17 other products to you later, but need for business where the business can do their business. business for business. But people are protected and the damage is minimized when that breach happens.
All right, next up here, medical data exposed in the US and UK. Speaking of data was collected, we could argue this was pretty essential, but a Russian-speaking Quilling gang has now published 400 gigabytes of private medical information they obtained from UK lab services provider Synovis. Quillen also refused to accept responsibility for patients impacted by their June 4th attack, suggesting the attack was retaliation for the British government's involvement in unspecified wars. I look skeptically over my glasses. In related news, Change Healthcare confirmed its ransomware attack in February resulted in the theft of medical records, impacting, this is a quote, a substantial portion of people in America. It said it will be able to start notifying impacted victims by late July. So, Bill, Brett Callow from Emsisoft has pointed out that healthcare organizations are increasingly being targeted because attackers know they will have a big payday. I guess, looking at these two giant cases here, what can be done to reduce this type of vulnerability?
This is tough. It's some of the most advanced breakthroughs come from tech in medical, and I think the single biggest weakness medical has is tech. They are truly vulnerable. I think if you look at some of the existing things like validated systems for life sciences, the process to revalidate a system is arduous and expensive. So every time you patch it, you have to revalidate it. And if you've built off of a Windows system that has Patch Tuesday, that's a hamster wheel of death.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, so it's. I think we need to find ways. Like you're right, threat actors like during early COVID said we won't hit the hospitals, and they didn't. Like to their credit, nobody got hit in the early days, and then one of them went, "Well, there's a lot of vulnerable targets out there. I'm going to hit them," and it just became a free for all. It needs to have that panic, that fear, that threat of something to pay, right? That's the expectations that they're going to pay. You can try and isolate systems, lock them down, but there's always ways around it. Again, it's trying to minimize the risk. One of the things I think would be really interesting, and I have no idea if this will go over because half the people call me a communist for saying it, but why don't we hit the pharma and the medical device manufacturers with a nominal fee of some sort that will be pooled to help build cybersecurity? Because in UK, Canada, countries like that, where health is I guess a right, but it's a government expense, they don't spend money well in those countries. It's not spent well. There's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy wrapped around it. So they're not, I think, getting the most efficient use of their dollars against cybersecurity. And here in the US, it's a for-profit, right? So we're going to keep that bottom line as healthy as we can, which means we are going to do the bare minimum. So I think if you had something in there where you could pay to play, if you're going to play in the pharma industry and you're going to create drugs or solutions that are going to be sold through these medical institutions, then why don't we just add a little surtax on there to create a better cybersecurity environment for them?
Yeah, and I wonder, it's very interesting because we've seen in the consumer space that there are some companies, like I think of Apple, that like privacy and security is a marketing feature for them, right? It is a product differentiator in a very serious way for them. I wonder now. Obviously, the purchasing decision making is many levels more complex than a consumer offering, but I wonder if there isn't also an opportunity to be like, hey, this is our whole bag is making secure devices, whether it's organizing a consortium to do something similar to that, where it's, hey, we're gonna float all boats here, something like that. But I like that idea of kind of pooling resources to try and tackle this collectively. I think that's whether it's government led, a consortium, there seems to be a lot of incentive to do it, right?
Yeah, there's a consortium for critical infrastructure in the U.S., right? That's a known entity that helps, and it brings players in from all over to help build, and then you get a little bit of say in, all right, I'm going to try and push it in a direction that is best effective, i.e. cost effective and useful for my company, but have a little say in how it gets done. But at least we're working towards a better place. Like there's literally no way we as a human people get anywhere without starting to pool together some of these things.
So I guess we solved it, Bill. So
there we go.
medical can just send us, we'll invoice everybody, and we got it all figured out.
Friday afternoon.
All right. Before we move on to our next story, we have to spend a few moments and thank our sponsor for today, Vanta. Whether you're starting or scaling your security program, Vanta helps you automate compliance across frameworks like SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more. With Vanta, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing Trust Center. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security. Our listeners get $1,000 off at vanta.com/headlines. That's VANTA.com/headlines. All right, next up here, MITRE has a memo for a president. We don't know who. MITRE, the not-for-profit organization that manages federally funded research and development centers, is weighing in on where the incoming administration should set its focus next year, regardless of who wins in 2024. The memo was broken into 4 different priorities. Number 1 being protecting critical infrastructure, followed by implementing zero trust and software bill of materials, SBOMs, preparing for quantum computing, and clarifying cybersecurity leadership roles. These recommendations emphasize upgrading legacy systems, enhancing security practices at local and state levels, and ensuring readiness for post-quantum cryptography. Additionally, MITRE suggested making the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, we all know it as good old CISA, as an independent agency, mapping out roles and responsibilities for cybersecurity personnel within the first 90 days. So, Bill, without making this a political discussion, which I guess we've already done, do you find this announcement to be anything more than a standard list of priorities? Like, these all sound great. I'm sure, like, no one is saying, like, these are, well, maybe the CISA thing, but I a lot of good ideas here. Do you see anything here that's missing or anything that stands out to you?
I guess the one thing that sort of stood out to me was why they called out SBOMs and zero trust. Like, if you don't trust anything, you should have been getting an SBOM, right? That's part of it. And I think it's important for MITRE to be very clear on what they're talking about and how they talk about it, because so many people, like, there is not a security meeting I think I go into when a standard comes up that MITRE doesn't get brought into it. So they have a lot of influence to the population at whole, maybe not to the next president, whoever it is, or even within the government. Maybe they sort of take it at face value or however they want to take it. But a lot of the practitioners are very, very, I think, I don't want to say devoted, but they feel they really, really embrace what MITRE brings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's critical that they are very clear on their wording, because that separation sort of makes it go, huh. And then I start questioning, does MITRE truly understand what zero trust is, right? It really should be the simple philosophy of trust nothing. You're going to verify everything in real time. That's sort of how it should go.
Well, maybe the SBOM is a list of things never to trust, right? And then at least you know specifically what you're not trusting. Like to me, I see 100% where you're going with that. Those two don't seem related.
Well, actually, no. An SBOM is part of zero trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm in a zero trust architecture, if I'm following the philosophy, the first thing I'm doing is I'm saying to every vendor, give me a bill of materials on how you built the software. I need to know what's in it. I'm not going through another, pick your poison of what's happened in the past. So it was just a little odd on that one. And then to me, I'm super happy that they pointed out quantum safe encryption or quantum computing, because if you've done any research on quantum safe computing, and I tried to do this, and it'll give you a headache, just trying to understand superposition and how that affects cryptography. This is going to come up on us really quickly, right? There are fully homomorphic encryption processes out there that can be utilized. Some are quantum safe, some are not. That's sort of why I got into it. But it's coming faster than we think. And if you think about our entire security posture, so much of it is built off encryption, right? Yeah. We encrypt for protection. And when you render all regular encryption useless, we are going to be back to 1997 facing 21st century AI-powered attacks. It will just not be a pretty sight. So people should start planning for that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been one of the themes this year on this show, is kind of seeing the smoke, right? Yeah. And realizing, that fire is probably not too far away.
And it's a lithium fire. This is not a regular fire. This is a full-on, Samsung battery is going up soon.
Yeah. Luckily, the fire. Well, we're torturing the metaphor, so we will.
We are.
All right. Next up here, cut and paste tactics import malware to unwitting victims. I guess witting victims are just asking for it. Over the past 3 months, researchers at Proofpoint observed a threat actor tracked as TA571, maybe a catchier name, guys, using fake pop-up text boxes suggesting an error occurred when trying to open the document or web page. Instructions then prompted users to copy and paste a malicious PowerShell script into either the PowerShell terminal or the good old Windows Run dialog box. The script then loads various malware strains, including remote access Trojans and info stealers. So, Bill, a great spoofing technique, one that will catch many people off guard, especially when they're just, trying to get work done. The classic reason why you do something that would otherwise be wrong. Experts are recommending that organizations update their user training to help them identify and report suspicious activity to their security teams. But, you know, we've tried that with phishing emails for 30 years. Training people to be vigilant just doesn't work in and of itself. It's part of a solution, but doesn't work in and of itself.
Yeah.
I guess, should we be throwing some AI here in terms of observing unusual behavior? Is that a better solution than just here's another quarterly seminar to sit through?
Yeah, 100%. Like I used to use the analogy, we're trying to train, and training, this kind of training is generational. It is not next week or at the end of the year so I can tick a box on my insurance form. It is generational. You have to have, if you look at the generations that are younger than us, and that's probably only one in my case. If you look at the generations that are younger than us, they have awareness on some of these things. They understand that doesn't look right. It smells sus, as the kids say today. And what we have to do is we have to start taking decisions away, right? Because put me in a finance role, I'm on a PIP in 2 weeks, I'm fired in a month. I might not even make it that long because that's not my job. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take all these people out there whose jobs are not cybersecurity and make them cybersecurity experts. So yes, your idea of utilizing AI, there are systems that are being built today that go, instead of doing that, and this happened at my company, I had to force everybody at Kraft to go through the annual training. And that is just a nightmare in of itself, but it's quite frankly pointless. Most of them know exactly what it is, right? Just drag the slider bar, answer the questions, you're done. And I said to him, I'll find you a system that will allow you to behaviorally exempt yourself from training at the end of the year. So it's actually an AI system that watches the behavior, throws phishing, smishing, email tests, and all these different things at them. And it grades their behavior and the risk they pose based on their role in the company and how they do on these things. And only those ones then need to be course corrected when the mistake happens. That's one way to start changing the behaviors. And I think that's where we have to go. We have to get into the use of AI and machine learning across a lot of the first level security issues, right? There's just too many, too fast, too many decisions need to be made. And humans don't make decisions the same way. Two people sitting beside each other will not make the same decision necessarily, but an AI system will, right? So you can have it apply consistency. And then when there's a failure in the consistency, you can adjust the policy. So I think that is truly where we're going to have to end up.
I love that idea of it being a generational problem, right? And I don't think enough organizations take kind of, I guess, a long form view of that, because I feel like I'm going to be in that generation when it comes to deep fakes, right? Like where like someone that's 12 years old when they're, or just a kid now and coming up with that is going to have a totally different set of social receptors to being able to understand that kind of stuff than I will. I'll be the person clicking on the deep fake video and thinking it's real. And be
Yep.
like,
Oh, yeah.
Rich, you just don't get it.
We'll be the crotchety old people going, not again.
I remember when people were real.
We see that, like I always said, if you wanted to like just QA your software, get somebody who's over 65. My mother, when she was 72, I think, used to QA software for a company I worked for, and she had the highest bug count find because she didn't understand the nuances and the fixes, right? And it's the same with security. They just got to have that repetition where you'll bring people in and they will smell what doesn't seem right.
CCL, kind of to your point of removing options, removing choices for people, suggests, removing tools like PowerShell from consumer devices, make users go through hoops, does not stop. Oh, I'm sorry. He says taking away things like PowerShell just makes users go through hoops, doesn't make them stop, it just delays bad decisions. So, yeah.
Yeah, anything that can help them sort of, as they're trying to do their job, as they're trying to get out, for the long weekend, whatever it is, as they're going through it, makes them go, oh, wait a minute. Why am I doing this? Like if I have a process that, we know that this thing never happens or shouldn't happen, or you take away those things so that they won't happen, where it says, well, you need to install PowerShell for this to work. I don't know what PowerShell is, right? I'll call IT. And, it's a good stopgap to try and get them to break the chain.
And I like David Cross's, monitoring their email and having their security training be based on their behavior. It's like monitoring your driving, and you get lower insurance premiums.
Yep.
So I think that's a great analogy. Thank you,
And the
David.
key in that one, don't use it against them, right? That's the
Yeah.
key, because the whole thing with the monitoring driving for insurance is are afraid that they'll be used against them in an accident that becomes your fault, or that you're speeding, you're going to get a remote ticket. You have to make sure that you have the trust of your users, and you're not going to use that piece against them.
All right, and our last story for today, Marco Polo scam delivers info stealer through fake meeting software. A cautionary tale from the world of crypto this week, with a scam being run by the threat group Marco Polo, stealing cryptocurrency delivered through a purported virtual meeting software named Vortex. The group promoted the legitimacy of Vortex by maintaining a dedicated Medium blog filled with suspected AI-generated articles, as well as a verified account on X carrying a gold checkmark. The malware is delivered by an installer disguised as a downloadable executable for the Vortex meeting application and poses a significant threat to Mac OS environments. So, Bill, aside from this threat group tainting swimming pool fun forever, this tactic reveals the creativity of using AI to generate media to boost the reputation of a malicious application. Hey, it's legit. They have a long-running Medium blog, right? Kind of the same way fake reviews on shopping sites. Kind of a similar idea here. Another example of the bad guys finding all kinds of ways to use legitimate tools for bad objectives. Just curious about your thoughts. Seemed a little unique this week.
Yeah, we see it with all the bots across all of the platforms. There are large human farms in certain countries where they simply churn out history, right? They log in as different profiles. Again, the interesting part being, the cultural awareness, the English grammar, those types of things don't translate very well. So you can tend to spot them. And you get that friend request, and you look at the friend request, and the account's like all of 4 days old and has one post. And you go, yeah, I know what that is. The AI is going to allow them to generate realistic backstories, histories, images in real places. So it's not that horrible cut and paste of a face, standing beside somebody famous. It's going to look real, and it's just going to make it more and more difficult to figure out what is real, what isn't real on those sides. Stepping away from the fact that if it's not Zoom, Teams, or Google Meets, it doesn't exist in my books. So why somebody went to a Vertex or a Vortex for another meeting platform? I would have been the one emailing back on, no, we're on Zoom. Let's go with this.
Yeah, I know you're a crypto firm, but we're still using the regular. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, it's going to really create it, make it real hard to identify what is a real identity and what is not. And you get me on the subject of identity and self-sovereign identity, we'll be talking for a week.
We'll have to talk to the folks at Inrupt about their data pods and see if maybe we can get some solutions there. Thanks to everybody in our chat that was keeping it fun. CCL, David Cross. I also saw Kevin Farrell in there, wishing everybody a happy solstice. Indeed, it's all downhill from here. CCL had one last comment. He said, deepfakes are already happening. My parents sent a video to me, which they thought was real. I'm sorry, CCL. That is the fate that awaits all children with parents. Inevitably, they will receive that video. I will not be the exception. So thanks to everybody that was commenting and just having fun in there. Bill, before we get out of here, was there any story that you reacted strongly to this week in our lineup or just in the news?
That Surgeon General's warning that social media is bad for your health, and the sort of slapping the warning sticker on it like cigarettes was, I thought, really interesting. I don't know if it's good or bad. I haven't really figured that out, but I think a lot of parents today still don't realize the damage that social media can do to young children, and associating it with something that was widely understood as being dangerous and deadly for your health as cigarettes may not be such a bad idea.
Yeah, it certainly recontextualized it. And again, a generational thing. I feel like someone that was 13 years old and had an Instagram is going to be a way different parent than someone that was 26 and dealt with that as an adult. So yes, totally. I completely agree. Same thing. I don't know how exactly I feel about it, but definitely something to mark as important. Bill, we're just about out of time here, but where can people find you on the cyberspace if they're so inclined they need some more Bil Harmer in their life? Where do they get it?
You can find me on LinkedIn, as per anyone else, under William Harmer. They made me use my legal name. And I've also got my own website at www.willharm3.com.
That's on the World Wide Web, from what I understand. Okay.
That is.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bil Harmer, the operating partner and CISO over at Craft Ventures. Real quick, are the Craft Ventures portfolio companies, you got any openings there that our audience needs to know about?
Yeah, we do. You can actually go to www.craftventures.com. We have a section in there that posts all of the jobs that our portfolio companies are hiring for.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has truly been a pleasure. Fantastic. As you could tell, could have gone deep on any of these a little bit more. Thanks also to our sponsor for this week, Vanta, compliance that doesn't suck too much. Visit them at vanta.com/headlines. Thanks also to our audience today. Again, can't get every comment up on the screen, but we really appreciate being here, supporting the show, and participating. Come back next Friday for another Week in Review show at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And in the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines every single week. We'll give us 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Straffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.